Tech Talks. So I'm Catherine Jaffrey, and I'll be hosting today. But we're very excited to welcome both Arnold de la Ponce, who is one of the founders and owners of MavenNext. And I'll let him dive in a little bit more. But just so you know, MavenNext is the company that is powered this Tech Talk. But also MavenNext is a partner to ServiceNow and does a lot of great stuff on the technology front. Also, we have Mario with us today as well. He's with Riverhorse, and he too, I know, will divulge a little bit more about his background and how both MavenNext and Riverhorse has partnered together. So why don't we turn it over to Arnold right now, and if you can just give us a little background about yourself and what brought you here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for everybody for being here and joining us. Hopefully it's a good, robust conversation. Mario, always a pleasure to have a good conversation with you. It's been a bit since we've actually seen each other. COVID, obviously, right? But this is, this will do. So a little bit about MavenNext. MavenNext is a specialist partner for ServiceNow. It is a relatively younger company out in the ecosystem. However, it is made up of a team that is has been in the ecosystem for a very long time. Very well versed, very experienced. Myself, 10 plus years on the platform, consulting, advising, co-founder as well. So yeah, so we're headquartered out of Columbus, Ohio, but we span across the country. We have a pretty robust footprint here in the Bay Area, and that's exactly where I'm at today. We focus on ITSM, obviously, but our key points are integrated risk management and asset management from a holistic approach. Again, really excited to be here with you guys, and looking forward to a good conversation.
There we go. Thanks, Arnold. And we'll go ahead and toss this over to Mario. So Mario, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit more information about Riverhorse and also what brought you here today and your background.
Sure. So I am the founder and chief education officer of Riverhorse, Inc. We are an education services firm that focuses on IT industry standards and technologies. I myself actually started off as a customer of ServiceNow back in 2009, where I was responsible for incident problem and knowledge for a company that serves as the back end to all the major banks up here in Canada. I'm actually based out of Toronto. And at the time, we were trying to do a little bit of everything on the platform. So we were trying to implement basically every application from the spring 2009 release. By the time that we went live, we were on Aspen. And from there, I actually shifted into more process consulting in general for ITIL. So I do have my ITIL expert designation and how to apply it on ServiceNow. So as soon as I got into my career in implementations, I knew that there was a big need for training and just that mix of applying all of the industry standards, technologies intertwined. And so a couple of years ago, actually, we just hit our anniversary, 2-year anniversary for the company this past week.
Congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So you said 2 years?
2 years, yeah.
Wow.
So we jumped into being official partners of ServiceNow. So Riverhorse is the first independent authorized training partner of ServiceNow in North America. And just like Arnold and the MavenNext team, we do have folks that are all spread across the continent. And we teach over 23 of the official ServiceNow classes and a few of our own Riverhorse made classes and a few that are part of the industry with things like ITIL and ITIL 4 foundations.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you've been one of the partners now for 2 years. And you said in Canada, but you're across, different regions across both the Canada and the States, correct?
Oh, for sure. And
Okay.
When you start teaching these classes, especially now with all this online stuff that we're doing, you'll be teaching, a regular 9 to 5, but you have people from the States, all across Europe, India. So it's a small company, but we have a pretty big global footprint.
Right. You span across, like you said, globally. That's wonderful to hear. Well, thanks for sharing, both Arnold and Mario. We appreciate you both being on today. And we're going to just jump in right now. We'll start with OCM, or organizational change management. And just to kind of come and start with that, I'm not sure everyone is familiar. Maybe you could give us a little bit of background. What is OCM and why is it important to a company?
Sure, Arnold, do you want me to start off here?
Yeah, go for it. I'm with it.
Yeah, so OCM has evolved throughout the years. A lot of us are looking for a standard approach for how it is that we apply all of our business processes, make changes to technology, but we tend to forget the cultural aspect of how the people, process, and technology are going to be impacted by whatever significant change that we're trying to apply. So really, the idea of having an OCM approach is for us to figure out what changes are required to make new behaviors, new skills get applied in an organization.
Great. And what would you say, and I'll ask this again to Mario, if that's all right. But Mario, what are some of the changes you've seen with the adoption of OCM and the concept of OCM?
Well, it's changed significantly, actually. Back when I was in university many years ago, we had a single elective course that talked about organizational change behavior.
Yeah.
Most of what we talked about was on the project management aspect, how it is that you manage a finite body of work. And then the rest of the classes were things on specific programming languages for different types of technologies. So once I started my career, it was pretty much that same approach, but quickly realizing as we went on more and more implementations that the idea of the human element, how we factor that in, became more and more prevalent. And there were a lot of good books and thought leaders that had come in place to kind of give that some idea, some exposure, make it part of the forefront. One of the first fun books that I read that was focused on this concept was Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure of sitting in one of those sessions. But no, honestly, they were pretty interesting in how they described a change and how it is that we will either jump on it or we would fear it. And the reality is most of us are uncomfortable with a change. And so what you tend to do is try to figure out ways of overcoming it or avoiding it rather than trying to tackle it, understand it, and then start making changes. And so when we start looking at how that gets applied in the business world, a lot of those ideas have become staples of what we chat about in the idea of OCM, where we want to look at a change, we want to figure out how we make it into a positive, instead of thinking of losing something, how we are gaining something, and then from there, establishing new routines. Because a lot of us, especially now with this whole COVID thing, we are used to our traditional routines. We are complacent. And when we start seeing a big shift, now we need to figure out how is it that that's going to impact what we do day to day and how we think of the work that we do. So we have to learn how to anticipate change and just try to avoid our natural tendencies, or at least be mindful of them as we're trying to figure out what we're trying to apply.
Yeah, from an implementation type standpoint, I mean, we can get pretty, just pulling the levers and being very formal about it, right? Again, read a book on OCM and go try to apply it. But in the real world practical experience, you see that a lot of it is psychological, right? It's understanding the folks that you're actually working with. We, in the work that we do, we're approaching folks that we've probably never met before, right? Organizations that are going through change. That in itself is tough, right? How are they, not only are the folks adapting to that change, but how is that company going down that path today? How are they executing that OCM prior to us even getting there, right? Understanding what that looks like and how that's being executed prior to us really going in there and starting any workshop is key. What we like to do is we like to start up front and have those discussions with the key players from management all the way down to the folks that are going to actually be part of the engagement and start understanding their roles, right? Understanding the changes that they're going to have to be dealing with. So that way we can adapt to that and incorporate that into our OCM and into our full engagement as we're going forward. So that's key. It's more of a psychological aspect to this. And you mentioned COVID. We'll get into that a little bit more. But COVID today, I mean, obviously, folks are working from home, and that's huge change, right? A lot of consultants like ourselves, we're used to that. We're used to going, waking up in the morning, jumping on our calls, and just getting the day going. A lot of folks are adapting to that change in itself, let alone having to, be part of a team that's going to implement some type of organizational change internally, right? But if there's a lot going on today, and that OCM aspect of it is key. It's so important in how we execute our engagement.
For
Great.
sure.
And so what I'm hearing, there's both an element of the psychology behind a company adapting to an OCM and the change, but also the personnel and making sure they're having the correct communication. Is there a way to differentiate the two? I know we definitely use two different ways to describe the psychology and the human component, but do they often cross over? And what have you seen as success as you're managing both of those elements?
I would say that they do. A lot of what we try to do, like that example I gave you of that book, they don't use anything work related. In the examples, it's just common things like figuring out when it is that we take out the garbage, or maybe we're moving from going from high school to university. There's all kinds of changes that we have to factor in. So the challenge, it applies in our day-to-day lives, not just for work. And one of the nice points that Arnold called out is understanding all of the players. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was that whole trend of gamification a few years back where they were trying to figure out how it was that we could make people more engaged in the work experience like they do with a game experience, right? Something for fun. Because if you look at how people will tackle things like going to the gym and working out, you have to define your goal, establish what the rules are, constantly look for some sort of feedback to see whether there's been progress. And the biggest thing ultimately is voluntary participation. You want to be participating in this change. And so there's a lot of great books that have talked about that concept, which again, if you look at how the more modern approaches for OCM are, it's that same idea. How do we engage people? How do we want people to be motivated to be part of that change and become champions of it? Not just, I'm coming in to go and apply a new technology, or, oh, this is what the industry is moving to, let's go and start applying that. No, you have to be invested in it. You have to want it.
Yeah, and it starts at the top, honestly. We always have those conversations with the leaders, decision makers, and try to understand how passionate they are about what they're doing. A lot of times the engagements are somewhat reactive, right? We'll see where transformation has to happen because there was an audit, for example, or something like that. So again, you tend to see full engagement on the lower end of the scale, right? As opposed to engagements where you can see that an organization is actually improving, and it's a holistic approach to how they do things today, and everybody's behind it, right? It really does start from the top down, and championing those changes, right? So people can embrace it and be comfortable doing it.